Okay, this is a video on how to replace the pump or the belt on a Maytag washing machine here. The specific model is the SAV5710AWW. I gotta imagine that the parts and procedures would be applicable to some other washers as well, but that's the specific washer I have right here. I'm gonna go ahead and show you what you're going to need. First of all, make sure you unplug the power from the washer if you're going to be sticking your hands in there. It's always a good idea. As far as tools, you're probably going to need a light. I don't have a good trouble light, so I just got a little light here on the floor because you're going to need to see inside this panel down here. You're going to need a 5/16 nut driver. You're going to need a socket, a 1/2 inch size socket. And if you got a Torx bit set, you're going to need that too. I'm trying to get it. I'm not exactly sure the naming conventions on the Torx bit, so I'm not sure the size of this. If you have a whole set, it might be easier to go through, see which one you need, but you're definitely going to need a Torx bit to remove the pump from the motor shaft. To get started, it's real simple. First of all, you need to remove this panel off the bottom of the washer. You can see there's two little bolts at the bottom. That's where you need your 5/16 nut driver there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those here real quick. Okay, once those nuts are off there, this panel just kind of falls off. You can move it, put it aside for a minute. You won't need that until you're all done, obviously. Now underneath here you can see up top is the motor. Down below this gray bit is the actual pump itself. And it might be hard to see with the light, but you can see the belt there running from the pulley on the motor back to the drum there. To get all this off, first thing you want to do, there's 4 mounting bolts holding this motor and pump assembly in place. You need your 1/2 inch socket set to remove it. Here's the first bolt, and the other one's just on the opposite side there. You can see, actually you can see them both there. And there's one on the bottom on each side there. So there's a total of 4. Once you unscrew those, that whole assembly will just come loose from the frame there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Alright, once you get those 1/2 inch bolts loose there, this whole motor pump assembly just kind of sits loose there and is almost ready to come out. What you need to do next, there's 2 hoses on the right side. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the camera here. On the right side of the pump, there's these 2 hoses here that you need to disconnect. It makes it a little easier to pull the whole thing out, especially if you're going to remove or replace the pump. These 2 hoses do have water. I should say the hoses in the pump will have some water in it, so make sure you get like a towel or something to catch some of this water, otherwise it's going to run all over your floor, unless that's not a problem for you. The easiest way to remove these clamps, I found, because you see there's 2 hose clamps holding these hoses in place on these ports here. The easiest way, because these suckers are on there really tight and the hoses are on there really tight, is to squeeze these bits of the clamps with like a vice grip. That's probably the easiest. So it's holding it loose in place. That way you can pull the hose off, and I can show you here in just 1 second. Okay, so now I got my vice grip. It's kind of difficult positioning this guy on here so he doesn't come off. It will slip off there pretty easily, but just kind of grab. There's 2 little tongs there. You want to make sure you grab them both. Then once you have that in place, that clamp is loose. It makes pulling this hose off the port a lot easier. And like I said, when you do pull these hoses off, be prepared for some water to come out. Not a whole lot, but it will fill up this bottom basin and come out any seep holes here at the bottom and leak onto your floor. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a towel real quick to stop that. Okay, I got a towel in place now. I'm going to try to pull this off and hold the camera with the other hand, so it might be a little jerky here. It's easier to pull these hoses off one hand bracing the motor or the pump, and the other hand pulling on the hose. But loosen this clamp.
Daddy, that is cool.
That is cool. That's my 3-year-old son. Okay, now I got the clamp off. It might come off a little easier. There you go. And the water, she's flowing. There's actually a lot more water in it this time than the last. Wow. So you can see, well, if my arm's not in the way, water comes gushing out of there. It's going to come out of the other hose too. I'm going to go ahead and remove that other hose right now. One thing to note though, it is a lot more difficult to get a clamp on, or get a vice grip on this clamp in the back and pull it out, just because accessibility is a little bit more difficult. There's not a lot of room to get around there. Okay, I've got both those hoses off now. Make no doubt about it, they're not going to make this easy on you. The hardest thing about doing this job, obviously you got real confined spaces. You got big hands like mine, they're hard to stick in there sometimes. So pulling things out are not always the easiest. We'll go ahead and remove that. So you got your two hoses undone here from the pump. The next thing is, and you can see a little bit, some of that water got out. I'll try to sop some of that up for it. Runs into my extension cord here. The next thing is probably to remove this belt down here. Not necessarily remove it, but at least pull it off of the pulleys. Let me see if I can get a little more light here. I'll pull it off those pulleys. You've got the motor pulley here. In the back you've got the actual drum pulley or tub pulley. And what you can't see in here, or maybe you might be able to a little bit, you can see this little idler arm right here is for the idler pulley. To pull that belt off, you're just going to have to give some resistance to that idler arm, push it to make it a little looser, and then you can essentially get the belt off the idler pulley and then pull it off the drum pulley and the motor pulley. That easier said than done again. So again, real confined spaces, especially back there with that drum pulley, but give it a shot here in just a minute. Lovely. You might be able to pry it off that drum belt with a screwdriver. That might make it loose, but getting your hand back there is not very easy to do. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. There we go. If it's starting to come off the drum belt on one side, put your thumb on that and turn the drum in that direction, which there, it just slipped off the back there. So I'm going to get the camera here. Now the belt is loose from that back pulley there. You can see it's got to stay on this pulley because it's actually threaded through the pump, which I know the lighting's not very good here, but it's threaded through the pump here, so you can't actually take the belt off if you're replacing the belt until you remove the pump from the motor. So now that you got the belt off, now you can pull the motor assembly out of the cabinet. It should all stay pretty contained. One thing to keep an eye on though is this wiring harness right here is still attached to this frame here, so it's not like you can remove the whole thing and walk out of the room with it. It's got to kind of stay in the general vicinity there. There's not a lot of slack, so I'm gonna go ahead and like I said, you gotta finagle this sucker just to pull it out of here. It's probably the hardest thing is getting this guy in and out. So tilt it, play with the idler pulley because there's not a lot of clearance, and you should be able to get the whole thing out. We'll see here in just a second. Okay, that actually came out a lot easier than it did the first time, just because I did it last night. But anyway, push up on that motor assembly since it's loose, lift it up a little bit, clamp that or pull in on that idler pulley so you get clearance, and then tilt the whole thing backwards with the pump coming towards you, and then you can kind of bring the bottom out. You see the motor's got to kind of stay in the back there because of that wiring harness is secured to the frame. Otherwise, the pump and the belt here are now exposed. So the next thing you want to do is remove the pump, and to do that, that's when you need that Torx driver, because there are 3 Torx bolts. You can see there's one here, there's one here, and there's one down here. So you need to remove all 3 of those and then pull the shaft off. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those screws right now. Alright, I've loosened those 3 Torx bolts there. Now the whole pump should slide right out because it's just kind of, the shaft is just seated down inside the pump. So it should pull off. Now the one I did last night didn't come off so easy because there was some stripping of the threads inside where the shaft sits in there. Also there was a little bit of, I guess, excessive heat, which was causing the seat to kind of warp a bit. So if you have to, you might have to rock it back and forth in all directions slowly. That's what I had to do last night, because sometimes that pump just doesn't want to pull off the shaft. Right now I think it's going to come off pretty easy here. I'll put it in the tripod. Okay, this thing should just pull right off. That came off nice and easy. Here you can see those 3 Torx bolts, and that's the pump right there. Pretty simple. It's about a $50 pump. I know that because I just bought one last night. This one right here, it's perfectly good. And you can see the way that the seat is threaded and the way the shaft is formed. It just kind of slides down inside there. So once you pull that off, obviously there's your belt, and you can put a new one on. Now putting it on, if you're going to put a new belt on this thing, you have to put the belt on this pulley before you put the new pump on. That's critical there, because like I said, the way this is seated, the belt actually runs around, I think, this mount right here. So if this is the pulley, the belt is running around there. So if you're going to put a new one on, make sure you put the belt around the motor pulley before you mount the pump. And then really from this point, you just do everything in reverse. You mount the new pump on the shaft, tighten those Torx bolts, slide everything back in there. The hardest part then is getting this new belt around the other pulleys. So you want to make sure you slide the belt around the tumbler pulley, not the tumbler pulley, but the tub pulley in the back there, and then you use this this idler pulley to put the tension on it. Once you've got that in place, you hook the hoses back up, and then you put the mounting bolts, the half-inch mounting bolts in the motor frame, and you attach it back to the dryer frame, and then you put your 5/16 bolts back in, put your front panel in, and that's how you do it. So you just do everything in reverse. If you're going to replace the pump or you're going to replace the belt, from start to finish, plan on it taking, if you're a novice like myself, plan on it taking a good 45 minutes to an hour, especially if you've never done it before, because like I said, getting everything out and getting everything back in is really cumbersome if you haven't done it. Today it came out a lot easier just because I went through these steps yesterday. Anyway, that's pretty much it for replacing a belt or replacing a pump on a Maytag SAV5710AWW washer. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them below and I'll try to respond. I'm not a repairman by any stretch of the imagination, just trying to save myself a little money. This particular washing machine is getting tossed out tomorrow because the transmission is bad, and that's a really expensive repair and part that I don't feel like doing right now. It's just makes more sense to get a new washer. This is about a 6-year-old washer, but anyway, that's it, and hope that helps you, because I didn't find anything on YouTube like this already. So like I said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks.